Hey guys, we're going to be painting this little fuzzy ass bird today. I liked him mainly because he's an oval shape, and that's kind of in keeping with the previous tutorials I've been working with basic shapes, circles, and spheres and things like that. In this case, it's an animal, little bird. I love painting birds. They're very expressive. You don't have to be 100% accurate. You can really do your own interpretation, and they still look like birds. And plus, I love the little angry bird look on his face, and that the fact that he's straight on is also kind of a challenge. You have to really work with shapes and your modeling and your color in this piece. So we'll get started by dropping in the initial color blocking wash. And in this case, here's the original photograph that I'm working from. I'll post this in the comments as well, but I'll just start working with kind of a gray, neutral, blue-gray, dropping in that background. Background isn't much, just needs some nice density and contrast to make the bird pop, and we'll have a nice highlight edge. And that stage, this is the first stage I always start with. And typically when I'm working with birds, I'll normally drop in the background first, just to kind of get the shape established. And then I'll do all the blocking and the color work on the bird itself, trying to protect that highlight edge, so I'm not letting the colors I'm putting on the interior of the bird shape to touch the exterior background shape. I don't want to have a blend, and you can see the wing right there is kind of blending in together, but that's all right. It always dries lighter as you might recall. Just drop in that color, let the colors meld, let it dry, and get that initial blocking all done. Again, this little guy, it's all about the modeling, getting that sense of form, that light, that roundness, plus texture. This is a little different than maybe the orange or the lime. When I was painting it, there was a lot of glazing there. There's going to be some glazingness on this as well, but it's going to be a little less strenuous, I think, on the textural part. So if you make the right type of marks when you're doing the blocking, you won't have to kind of readdress it later on. So this is a small piece, so it should go together pretty quick. Working on the branch right now, dropping in the detail, not the detail, but the contrast layer. So I'm kind of bouncing between stage one with the color blocking and also finding the big shapes and the color saturation. So it's a bit of a meld of those two techniques, or stages, I should say. All right, I do have this video sped up about 3 times normal speed. I'm working on it's still a student grade paper. It's not the Canson, but in this case it's the Strathmore paper. All right, we have jumped into, actually, because of the bird, I can kind of bounce around between the various stages. Now I'm kind of jumping over to the stage 3, where I'm going to establish real quick this face on the bird. If I can get that right with the contrast and the detail, I can then bounce back into stage 2 and get more of the contrast and saturation established. But first, I wanted just a little bit of structure on the face of the bird, get that going, and then I can work around that with the other washes, finding the big shapes, the saturation, and the color complexities that stage 2, and then a little more of the stage 3 detail with the feet and the branches later on. So definitely just looking for tone and form, using colors, cool colors in the feathers. I warm it up down there towards the shadow, towards his feet. There might be some reflected colors coming up from the branch. Even though I haven't worked on that yet, I know that's what's happening. Doing a little picking for texture right there. A little more detail. So yeah, this one is definitely a little more of a mishmash of the stages. And I can do that if a certain area is wet, I can't do a lot of detail, I'll move to another area that might be dry. So it's all just a matter of gauging and judging how wet or dry the surface is, depending upon what I can do. Adding shadow in onto the legs, so a little bit of that detail, a little structure. It's coming together. Just suggestion of detail on the feather, little separation down the center, 2 different feathers, some marks for texture. Coming in after the branch now, getting some of that contrast and detail plugged in there. Both a mixture of wet on dry and dry brush, a little dry on dry. A little definition on that feather. On the edge, put a little bit of a darker edge in a broken way along the edge of that highlight, that blue background and the white highlight, that rim light that's on the bird, or on the top edge of that branch. Again, more detail, structural marks, cross contour marks, kind of indicating the roundness of that branch just by the direction I make the mark. I'm essentially drawing with the brush right now. It's a fairly thick mixture, fairly thick and dark mixture, painting on there and creating the illusion of texture. Working a little more structure onto the feet of the bird, a little more highlight or shadow. Throwing a nice glaze on the top edge of the branch. Indicates maybe the shadow that's being cast by the bird onto the top. That blue is right under the bird. Working on his little wing. Intensifying some tone. Working on some texture. So you can see I bounce around from tone to texture to glazing. Trying to influence color. There's that intensifying the background just a bit to make the highlight pop a little better. And normally it's at this point where a student might overwork the outline. I know a lot of my comments on student work is that your outline is too heavy and it's too continuous. You need to break it up and treat it more as an intensification of an edge just where you need it, not to outline the whole piece. At least if we're working in this style. Now there's a lot of styles where you do a lot heavier outlining and stuff, but in this case I don't think it's needed. Just kind of helping, using that dark contrast to make that highlight edge pop a little more with an irregular line. I think I messed up that right eye. I'll probably come in, if I remember right, I'll come in and kind of pull it back out and readdress it. So right now I'm just intensifying colors, adding saturation back in, and just glazing up, getting that color complexity and texture complexity going with this fuzziness that's on this little guy. I love that look. Throwing some of that warm down on that side of the oval. Yeah, I think yep, I said, up, screw it, I'm gonna fix it. I just lifted out the density I'm gonna let it dry, work somewhere else for a little while, let it dry, and I'll come back in and go after it again. So just realize it's just never perfect. You do have to work at it. Something's not working out correctly, just go back in, lift it, let it dry, come after it again. All right, looks like I'm dropping a little highlight in right now. While that eye is still drying, I'm just intensifying some edges with some highlight. Those knuckles on his feet. And that's a very thick mixture of white. It's very opaque. It's the only time I really use white is at this stage where I'm just trying to rescue some of the highlights that should be there. And I'm just working on that eye right now, bringing it back up, getting it back into shape, and just bouncing around and wrapping this piece up. So I hope you liked this video. This little guy was a lot of fun to do. I'm going to touch up some of the dribbles I might have made. So give me a like, hit the subscribe button, make a comment. I appreciate everything you guys are leaving for me. It gives me a lot of topics and things that I need to be aware of and be ready to work with. And here's the final little bird. He turned out pretty good for a fuzzy little guy. So grab a bird, find a shape, and start painting. Drop that watercolor in there and get going. And I'll see you in the next video.